Introduction. Let the noise of the modern world fade. Inhale slowly and exhale even slower. The air around you grows quieter, more distant, as if folding inward through layers of time. Tonight, we journey far, to a land of misty mountains, lacquered armor, and quiet, precise rituals. We are going to feudal Japan. There, amidst bamboo groves and fortified castles, the samurai lived and died by a code both revered and feared. These were warriors, yes, but they were also philosophers, poets, and monks of discipline. Legends have wrapped the samurai in glory, but beneath the stories lie realities far more complex and far more human. Tonight, you'll walk gently through the lives they led. We'll begin with the burden, the demanding life of the samurai, where honor was everything and death was never far. Then, we'll follow one of Japan's most tragic warriors through the storm of betrayal and legacy. We'll explore the quiet, mystical craft of their blades, before finally arriving at a place of serenity, the refined elegance of the samurai's private world. Now breathe. The cherry blossoms fall silently. The rain drizzles on the curved tiles of a wooden roof. Let's begin. Segment 1. Why it sucked to be a samurai. Imagine yourself wrapped in layers of silk and armor, kneeling quietly on a tatami mat as the morning sun spills pale light across the room. Your katana rests at your side, polished, sharpened, revered. You are samurai, bound not just by sword, but by duty, honor, and an invisible chain of social expectation that never releases its grip. To be a samurai was not a choice, it was a birthright and a lifelong obligation. You rise before dawn. Outside, the air is crisp and silent. Your training begins immediately. Hours of sword drills, archery, horseback riding, and the mental recitation of ancient texts. There is no excuse for fatigue, no allowance for hesitation. Your life is a balance between strength and silence, action and meditation. You must move with precision, think with clarity, and kill when needed without doubt. But the sword is not the heaviest burden. What weighs more is honor. Bushido, the way of the warrior, dictates every aspect of your life. It is not merely a code, it is a moral prison. You are expected to obey without question, serve without end, and uphold your master's name above your own. If you fail, even slightly, you must atone. And atonement for a samurai often means death. Harakiri, seppuku, the ritual suicide reserved for those who have dishonored themselves or failed in service. It is not a rare event. It is woven into your understanding of duty from childhood. To live with shame is worse than dying with honor. And so, many choose death, calmly, formally, with steel and ceremony. The very blade that gave you status may also take your life. You are always prepared for war. Even in peace, the constant possibility of conflict stalks you. Rival clans, feuding daimyos, shifting allegiances, all threaten your world. One day you might sit beneath a cherry tree composing poetry, and the next you might be riding into a battle where arrows darken the sky. War is not grand, it is muddy, chaotic, quick. You fight not for glory, but because it is your role. You swing your sword not for conquest, but because your lord commands it. You do not own your fate. Even your personal life is subject to control. Marriages are arranged. Friendships are strategic. Your appearance, your movements, your words, all curated to reflect the calm authority expected of your class. There is little room for self-expression. A misstep can be deadly, not just for you, but for your family. If you fail your duties, they may suffer in your place. And what of wealth? Many imagine the samurai as rich. Some were, but not all. Many were landless, roaming, masterless samurai, wandering and disgraced. With no lord to serve, they became outcasts, feared and pitied in equal measure. Once a protector of the realm, now a drifter, still trained, still deadly, but with no place in the world. You eat simply rice, miso, pickled vegetables,
ผู้เนี่ยthấy hiếm đó.
Ever aware that your life is not yours to command. Even in stillness, your thoughts are disciplined. To relax too much is to grow soft, and softness is weakness. So to be a samurai is not just to fight, it is to endure endlessly. It is to walk a narrow path where every step is watched, where every action reflects not just on you, but on your clan, your ancestors, and your legacy. A mistake echoes not for hours, but for generations. And yet, in the quiet, you still find moments, a gentle tea ceremony, the brushstroke of a poem, the way a sword sings as it's drawn from its sheath. These are your comforts, brief, fleeting, but cherished. To be a samurai was to live with discipline, purpose, and pride, but also with sacrifice, fear, and isolation. Segment 2, The Tale of Minamoto no Yoshitsune. Now let us turn our attention to a single figure, a name wrapped in honor and sorrow, whispered in poetry and legend alike. Minamoto no Yoshitsune. Imagine yourself now, not in a castle, but on the edge of a battlefield. The air is dense with mist. The clatter of armor and the stamping of restless horses punctuate the silence. Somewhere in this grey morning stands a man, slim of build, but fierce in spirit, a young commander whose tactical genius would win victories that reshaped the land, and whose fate would end not in triumph, but in quiet betrayal. Yoshitsune's story is not one of a steady climb. It begins, like many tragic heroes, in the shadows. Born in 1159 into the Minamoto clan during a time of violent strife, Yoshitsune was only a child when his father was executed by the rival Taira clan. Separated from his family, he was sent to a monastery, a place of stillness, meant to strip a boy of worldly attachments. But Yoshitsune's spirit was not one to be quieted. By adolescence, he had fled the monastic life, seeking out the arts of war, the sword, the bow, strategy. And from that study, something remarkable emerged, a mind uniquely suited to the field of battle. Yoshitsune reunited with his half-brother, Minamoto no Yoritomo, who was gathering forces to reclaim the power of their family. Together, they began what history would call the Genpei War, a brutal conflict to wrest control of Japan from the Taira. Here, Yoshitsune's genius began to shine. At the Battle of Ichinotani, he led a daring cavalry charge down a steep mountain path, attacking the enemy camp from a direction they believed impossible. The terrain was rugged, the risk enormous, but Yoshitsune's precision and daring stunned the Taira, and the victory became the stuff of law. At Dan-no-ura, he oversaw a naval engagement that brought the war to an end. It was there that the last child emperor of the Taira, only 6 years old, drowned, cradled by his grandmother in a desperate leap to avoid capture. Victory was complete. The Minamoto clan had triumphed. And yet, Yoshitsune's glory would soon curdle into exile. His brother Yoritomo, now the military ruler of Japan, the first shogun, grew wary. Perhaps it was jealousy, perhaps fear, or perhaps Yoshitsune's fame simply became too bright, casting shadows on his brother's own power. Yoshitsune was declared a traitor. From that moment, he fled from place to place, a fugitive, despite all he had done to unify the realm. With a small group of loyal retainers, he wandered northern Japan, sheltered by those still loyal to his name, but always a step ahead of danger. In the end, he took refuge in the house of an old ally. But even there, the net closed. Cornered and betrayed, with his pursuers at the gates, Yoshitsune did not resist. Instead, he took his own life, following the tradition he had been raised to revere. His death was quiet, formal, a final act of control in a life spiraling from triumph to tragedy. In the centuries since, his memory has only grown. Yoshitsune became a symbol of brilliance, loyalty, and the cruelty of politics. Poets mourned him, playwrights revived him. Even now, his name evokes something distant and noble, a man too good for the world he helped shape. But behind the romantic tales lies a quieter truth. Yoshitsune's life was not glamorous. It was filled with pressure, betrayal, and the relentless expectation that he must serve, even if it destroyed him. He lived by the code, but the code did not save him. His swordsmanship was real, his victories undeniable, and his fall utterly human. So as you drift now in thought, let the image of Yoshitsune stay with you. A figure silhouetted against dawn fog, one hand on his sword, the other gesturing for silence. A warrior, a brother, a fugitive, and finally, a legend. Segment 3, The Mystery of the Samurai's Sword. Now let your mind shift once again, not to the battlefield or the castle hall, but to a quiet forge. The air here is thick with heat. Sparks float like fireflies in the dim glow of the hearth. And at the center of it all stands the swordsmith. He is not armored, he is not loud. His movements are deliberate, slow, rhythmic, like breathing. You are watching the creation of a katana, the soul of the samurai. To the outsider, it is simply a curved blade, sharp, beautiful, deadly. But within the world of the samurai, the sword is far more than a weapon. It is a symbol, a companion, a mirror to the warrior's spirit. The process begins not with molten steel, but with iron sand, gathered, sifted, and smelted in a clay furnace called a tatara. For days, sometimes a week, the furnace burns without rest, tended around the clock. It is fed with charcoal and air, carefully balanced to control the carbon content of the emerging metal. From this, the smith extracts two kinds of steel, one hard, the other soft. They will be folded together again and again, layer upon layer, sometimes over 1,000 times, creating a blade that is both resilient and sharp, flexible yet unyielding. There is no rushing this. Each strike of the hammer must be precise, each fold a meditation. As the sword takes shape, it is as if the steel is being taught to breathe, to live, to remember the hands that made it. Then comes the tempering. The blade is coated in a special clay mixture, thicker along the spine, thinner near the edge. This creates the katana's distinctive heimin, a cloudy wave pattern visible along the blade, beautiful and functional. The sword is heated until glowing, then quenched in water. The result is a blade with a hard, razor-sharp edge and a spine that can bend without breaking. Each sword is unique, not just in its pattern, but in its spirit. The samurai believed the katana held a part of their soul. It was never drawn lightly, never treated casually. A sword was often named, passed from generation to generation, or laid to rest beside its owner. And to lose one's sword was to lose honor. But the mystery does not lie only in metallurgy. There were rituals. Before a blade was forged, the smith might fast, cleanse himself, pray. Sword making was a spiritual act, one that required not just skill, but purity. The workshop was quiet, nearly sacred. Even the act of sharpening the blade, using waterstones of increasing fineness, was done in silence with reverence. And then there were the stories. Blades that whispered in their sleep. Blades said to be so sharp they could cut through a falling leaf, or so well balanced they would hum when swung in silence. Some believed that great swords carried the intent of their maker, and that they remembered violence, or sought it. Of course, these are legends, but like all legends, they carry truth. Because to a samurai, the katana was not merely steel. It was discipline, memory, and death held in one hand. Even the way a sword was worn held meaning. Edge up, tucked into the obi sash, always on the left, ready to be drawn in one swift, arcing motion. The way it was drawn mattered, the way it was sheathed even more. There were rules for how to display it, how to pass it to another. To touch another man's sword without permission was not just rude, it was a provocation. And yet, The sword was not always used. Many samurai went their entire lives without drawing blood. But still, they trained, polished, watched their reflection in the blade, and asked themselves if they were worthy of it. Even now, centuries later, the mystery of the samurai sword endures. Museums display them behind glass. Martial artists study the forms. Historians marvel at their craftsmanship, but no one truly understands what it meant to carry one, to walk through life with the weight of death by your side, ready, balanced, silent, a blade that never forgets. Segment 4, the luxury of samurai life. As we leave behind the forge and its flickering embers, allow yourself to settle into stillness once more. There is another side to the samurai story, one not forged in heat and sharpened in battle, but cultivated in quiet gardens, tea rooms, and poetry. Not all samurai were at war. In fact, for long stretches of Japanese history, especially during the Edo period, many samurai lived not as soldiers, but as bureaucrats, poets, and refined gentlemen. Their lives, though still bound by honor and strict social codes, were filled with acts of delicate ritual and curated beauty. Let's step into such a world. Imagine yourself walking along a carefully raked gravel path in a kaiseki garden. The air is scented with pine and camellia. The world is hushed but alive. Each sound, each breeze seems part of a larger design. You pause before a sliding screen door, bow slightly and step inside. You are in a chashitsu, a tea house. Inside, a samurai kneels, his sword left respectfully at the threshold. Before him sits a host in a muted kimono, hands moving slowly over a lacquered tray. Every gesture is measured. Every object, tea bowl, bamboo whisk, cloth, has its place and purpose. This is not just a beverage. It is a ceremony of presence, a meditation in motion. This ritual, known as chanoyu, the way of tea, was deeply valued among the warrior elite. It was a time to set aside strategy and sword and enter a space of humility, balance, and refined taste. The host does not speak of war. The guest does not boast. There is silence, interrupted only by the sound of water, the rustle of robes, the soft click of ceramic. But this is only one part of the cultivated life. Many samurai were also scholars. They studied Confucian texts, wrote haiku, practiced calligraphy, and engaged in no theater, a dramatic art where subtle gestures carried layers of meaning. These were not hobbies. They were expressions of the same discipline that governed their martial lives. Their homes reflected this duality. Sliding doors opened onto serene rock gardens. Walls were hung with scrolls featuring elegant brushwork. Tatami mats muffled every step. The homes of the samurai were not ostentatious, but purposeful, orderly, clean. Every corner invited reflection. Meals were likewise rituals of balance. Rice, miso soup, grilled fish, pickled vegetables, served in small, exquisite dishes arranged with care. There was elegance in simplicity. Even the utensils, chopsticks, ceramic bowls, bamboo steamers, were chosen not just for function, but for aesthetic harmony. And their clothing, while practical, was deeply symbolic. A samurai's robes told you of his status, his allegiance, and even his mood. Silk for formality, cotton for daily wear, colors were subdued, earth tones, grays, muted blues. Flashiness was frowned upon. Even in their luxury, the samurai remained modest, a reflection again of their ideal, restraint over indulgence. Music floated through these spaces too, the plucked strings of a koto or the lonely sound of a shakuhachi flute echoing across a quiet veranda in the early evening. It was not the music of triumph, but of transience, of beauty fading, like mist rising from a mountain path. Even the seasons were honored with specific poems, garments, and gestures. The falling cherry blossom became a symbol of life's fragility, a metaphor the samurai embraced. It was fleeting, delicate, and yet achingly beautiful, This too was part of their strength. To live as a samurai was to dwell in paradox, to train for war but revere peace, to carry a weapon but sip tea in silence, to write poetry even knowing it may never be read. They were warriors, yes, but not brutish ones. Their culture required them to be refined, thoughtful, and deeply in tune with both the visible and invisible structures of society. And so as we close this final chapter, rest in that contrast. The samurai, trained in bloodshed, yet drawn to beauty, expected to serve without ego, to act without hesitation, and to die without regret, but also expected to pause, to reflect, to cultivate the stillness between battles. Their world was not simple, it was layered, like folds in steel or lines in a poem. And as you drift deeper into quiet now, perhaps you carry some of that with you, the rhythm of their lives, the discipline of their path, and the soft sound of a bamboo whisk stirring tea in a bowl of silence. Conclusion. And now, let the world of the samurai gently fade behind you. The clink of armor, the creak of a wooden gate, the quiet hiss of a blade return to its sheath. All of it softens, distant echoes from a time that lives not only in scrolls or museums, but in the rhythms of human memory. You've walked through battlefields and tea rooms, sat with swordsmiths, and stood beside emperors. You've seen the burden of duty, the weight of honor, and the delicate rituals that balanced a warrior's spirit. To live as a samurai was to constantly exist between opposites, violence and poetry, solitude and service, stillness and chaos. Their lives were not easy, and they were not always noble, but they were shaped by intention, by discipline, and by a deep belief in something greater than themselves. As you settle further into stillness now, remember the sound of water over stone, the scent of pine in winter, the feel of tatami beneath bare feet. The sword remains in its place, untouched. The lantern flickers low, and outside, beyond the sliding paper doors, the moonlight rests on moss and gravel. You are safe. You are far from battle. There are no commands to follow here, no code to uphold. Only the breath, the quiet, the steady unfolding of peace. Sleep well, and may your dreams be soft as cherry blossoms falling in spring.